Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so have you ever wondered what ties together ancient explorers, cosmic extraterrestrial warnings, and, of all things, modern gender roles? Well, today we are unpacking the highly detailed and, frankly, deeply esoteric spiritual cosmology presented in Chapter 2 of Ryuho Okawa's published Spiritual Messages. We're going to systematically break down a really fascinating text that bridges ancient history, cosmic dimensions, and our modern social struggles.
I know, it sounds like a completely wild mix of topics, right? But let's dive right into this intriguing question by examining the text's unique perspective on Earth's spiritual history and its current rapid societal transitions. As we navigate these concepts together, you'll see exactly how the source material weaves these seemingly totally disconnected threads into a single, unified cosmic narrative. We're pulling our insights straight from this specific source text, a book titled The Descent of Zoroaster in Maitreya. Now, just to be clear, our goal here isn't to validate or debunk any of this. We are focusing entirely on the channeled claims and the intricate structural cosmology presented within its pages. We're just going to map out exactly what the text says so you can understand the architecture of this belief system for yourself. To help us navigate all these claims, we'll follow a quick roadmap. First, the prism of light. Then, past reincarnations unveiled, reinterpreting Buddhist scriptures, the extraterrestrial warning, and finally, the Earth's experimental era. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the prism of light.
Let's start at the highest macro level described in the text, the cosmic identity of the entity identified as Maitreya. The text defines Maitreya not as your standard human soul, but as a highly elevated ninth-dimensional being. And the crucial takeaway here is that Maitreya's primary mission is to act as this literal prism of light. Imagine an actual glass prism taking pure, blinding white light, which is identified here as the supreme light of Lord Alcantara, and diffracting it into specific, usable colors. These different colors are then brought down to different eras and regions, effectively creating the zeitgeist, or the spirit of the times for humanity. What's truly fascinating here is how Maitreya is actually characterized. The text describes this entity as androgynous and non-individualized. Imagine trying to influence human history without any personal bias or ego getting in your way. Actually, that lack of a rigid personality is framed as a strict functional requirement. It allows the entity to impartially shape the spirit of different eras without a personal agenda interfering. It's a remarkably utility-driven view of spiritual existence. Moving right along to Section 2, Past Reincarnations Unveiled. So moving from that cosmic ninth-dimensional view down to Earth's actual historical timeline, the text outlines several specific past lives where this prism of light supposedly took human form. And wow, the historical resume is incredibly diverse. The claims start with the ancient founder of Mithraism, jump forward to the 15th century explorer Christopher Columbus, and then land in the modern era with Helena Blavatsky, the famous founder of Theosophy who was known for exploring the spiritual world. Now you're probably wondering, what do those vastly different figures even have in common? Well, within this cosmology, these varied incarnations weren't chosen for royalty, comfort, or prestige. Far from it. The entity tends to be born as individuals who wield the absolute precise type of influence required to push their respective eras forward. Whether that's discovering a new continent to connect the globe, or founding a spiritual movement to shift public consciousness, the incarnation is treated as a strategic deployment. It's all about advancing the spirit of the times. That brings us to Section 3, Reinterpreting Buddhist Scriptures. Here, the source material does something pretty bold. It explicitly addresses and corrects certain long-standing historical narratives found within traditional Buddhist texts. Traditional scriptures often claim that deities like Brahma or Indra, who are referred to here as Taishakutin, directly guided Gautama Siddhartha. However, this text asserts that is a major historical misunderstanding. It corrects the narrative, stating that these deities are actually just aspects or assistants working under the supreme deity El Cantare. Furthermore, the entity speaking in the text explicitly expresses doubt that it directly guided Gautama in the way ancient scriptures claim, so it's a fundamental restructuring of the traditional spiritual hierarchy. Okay, let's pivot to Section 4, the extraterrestrial warning. The narrative takes a massive shift right here. We are moving away from earthly religious history and looking straight up at the stars, linking Earth's current geopolitical tensions to ancient galactic histories. The text delivers a stark, chilling warning by referencing the Orion civilization. It outright claims that Orion was completely annihilated by nuclear warfare.
The source presents this not just as some fun cosmic trivia, but as a direct, urgent cautionary tale. It's a catastrophic, civilization-ending fate that extraterrestrial observers desperately want Earth to avoid at all costs. Because of this deep fear of nuclear destruction, the source claims Earth is basically under a microscope. It states that extraterrestrial groups actively intervene during major global crises. But they don't just land in flying saucers on the White House lawn. The interventions purportedly occur via subtle spiritual methods. They use wanderers, which are alien souls born into human bodies, and walk-ins, where an entity takes over a willing human host. The text notes that this exact type of intervention previously happened during the ancient mythological era of Mu, and it says it is happening again right now to steer us away from the fate of Orion.
And finally, Section 5, the Earth's experimental era.
Let's see how this grand cosmic overview builds into a very specific analysis of modern human society. The text views our current timeline as a totally unique experimental period. The argument is that in past eras, society was defined by physical power, swords, spears, and a very male-dominated hierarchy. But our modern era, it is completely shifted to intellectual power. The rise of computers, technology, and information has effectively erased that traditional physical power gap between men and women. The text sees this modern rise in fluid gender roles and equality not just as a cultural movement, but as a deliberate, spiritual experiment in human evolution. So how are followers of happy science supposed to navigate this highly fluid experimental era? The text provides some very specific marching orders. It asserts that simply talking about spirituality isn't going to cut it anymore. Demonstrating actual phenomena, like psychic abilities, is deemed an absolutely necessary and sufficient condition to prove spiritual truths to a skeptical modern world. To overcome the mainstream dismissal of the spiritual, followers are advised to courageously and rapidly expand their movement, without fearing social persecution. Crucially, it dictates that to become a true world religion, they've got to pair internationally accepted logical reasoning with profound, unshakable faith. As we wrap up this explainer, the source leaves us with a massive, profound framework to consider. It literally connects the ninth dimension, historical figures like Columbus, extraterrestrial warnings, and modern gender equality into one giant system. If our current societal evolution, with all its rapid technological leaps and shifting cultural norms, is indeed a planned spiritual experiment directed by a cosmic prism of light, well, what will the final result look like for humanity? It is definitely a fascinating question to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the source material, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.